So the fact that we are actually unclear on what we're doing with a live stream, but doing it anyway, is friggin' hilarious. Oh, here! Hello from the UK! Fantastic! Hello. We have 2 minutes until we go live with the Kickstarter, and I'm really... people who are listening in... Oh, that's excellent. People are showing up. As you show up, drop any questions you have for us in the chat. We're going to be looking at those questions for part of a Q&A during this next half hour after we launch the Kickstarter. And hopefully that means that we'll get questions we didn't expect, and you'll share in our crazy excitement after a year of planning this. Because it's been a long year, you guys. And if you can't tell, I am still very tired. Feel free to let us know where you're located. We don't even know how many people this is for lunch. Is this actually your lunchtime?
Not in the UK. It's dinner time.
Nope, but we got some other people. I'm curious. Not in the UK. It's early dinner or maybe supper. Is that a word? Oh, it's noon. Okay, you guys, are you ready?
Ray. Hi, Julie.
Hey! Are you ready? Everyone who's shown up, because it's noon, will get to see. I'm going to move some screens here, you guys. Hang on. Here we go. If you're watching the live stream, you're going to watch me actually press this button. Here we go. As you can see, we're on Kickstarter. I'm ready to launch. I say yes.
You're not showing your screen yet, though, right?
You should see it. I am showing it in the stream.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm going to hit launch. So here we go. Drum roll, it says. Congratulations, your project is live! Holy shit! Sorry. I'm going to just put this in the live stream for a moment. This is the actual Kickstarter. You can watch our video at the top, our trailer. We have so much going on in here. Welcome to our first Kickstarter for a book that we're all really passionate about. So feel free to go in there and take a look at the rewards, which are amazing, with names that we chose from Tanith's books. We have stretch goals in here. A lot of information on shipping. We try to keep the shipping low for a wide variety of countries, and include as many as we could, actually. So Spain, Italy, Germany, France, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. We figured out a way to print domestically so you get domestic shipping. And we also have signed books and signed prints from books from many authors, signed prints from Terry Windling as add-ons. And this actual live stream event is listed on there, plus other information. Now let's go back. I'm going to take this screen away and take you back to our group. Here we go. Carina, how are you feeling?
I feel great. Yeah. How are you?
I'm friggin' over the moon. I always like to test things, and I was like, okay, when I hit launch, will it launch? How about you, Craig? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
I'm so crazy excited. So I'm Julie C. Day. I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief at Essential Dreams Press, and I'm here with my co-editors for the Storyteller, a Tanith Lee Tribute Anthology, Carina Bissett and Craig Laurance Gidney. And we are going to spend the next 28 or so minutes with you guys reading some excerpts from Tanith's work, and then taking any questions you guys have about anything that's sort of project related, whether it's the Kickstarter, whether it's Tanith herself, whether it's favorite works, whatever. We're up for it. So feel free to use the YouTube chat if you're there. Otherwise, we're going to start with Carina. We're all going to read excerpts from some of the foundational, or either works that were foundational to us, or works that we just are especially drawn to. So Carina's going to go first, and I'm going to mute myself while you read.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Carina, Bissett. Fairy tales are my thing, so that's where we're going to start. So I'm starting with White as Snow. This is the book. In 1987, editor extraordinaire Terry Windling started the fairy tale series featuring the pre-Raphaelite-inspired cover art of Thomas Canty. The first volumes were originally published by Ace Books. The series then moved to Tor Books. The seventh book in the series was White as Snow, special book by Tanith Lee, a Snow White retelling published in 2000. Tanith had previously worked on this particular fairy tale in short form in the stories Red as Blood and Snowdrop. Windling, in White as Snow, says, she takes a startlingly fresh approach to this familiar tale in what she calls a brutal, mystical version of the story, invoking the Demeter-Persephone myth and old pagan religions of the forest. So I'm going to read the beginning first. This is part one. The Mirror, the Maiden. Once upon a time, in winter, there was a mirror. It had been brought from the east where the sun rose and the moon, that always rising place of curiosity and brightness. The mirror was made of glass, which in the lands it had been brought to was not usual, and so to protect it, but also because those who looked in it were sometimes very startled by the monstrous clarity of their reflections. It had a lid, which could be closed, and often then the mirror stood shut by its silver lid like a sleeping or a dead eye. However, today the mirror had been opened. What did the mirror see looking in? A young girl, slender, clear, and bright herself with youth. She stared at the mirror, which she knew must be sorceress, and then swiftly away. But the mirror continued to mirror her as she went to a high window and instead looked out. What can you see? Asked the blind old nurse in her turn. The snow, said the girl, and the black trees stretching up their arms to the sky. Nothing else. The nurse sang in her cracked voice, black is the wood, white is the snow, red the roses that under it grow. The girl paid no attention. She had observed something flickering, shifting through the avenues of the winter forest. Was it a group of riders? A pack of wolves? Then nothing was there, only the wind thrusting by the trees. War was bounding over the snow's book towards its castle, but the girl had not seen this. And the old nurse, witch enough to have once done so, was half blind too, now, in her psychic vision. Black is the wood. Hush, said the girl, irritated. She spoke to the nurse as 7 years before. The nurse would have spoken to her. Without protest, the old woman withdrew herself, a snail, into the shell of her thoughts. And the girl went on staring at the forest. Her name was Arpasia. Her hair was black as the woods, her pale skin better than the snow. Her eyes, though, were a light water gray. She was 14 years of age. She longed for change, not knowing the change of all things was almost upon her, nor what it could mean.
Carina, I got to my, hang on, this is me. Okay, so you read that excerpt. When you first read it, what did it do for you? What was it to you? What about Tanith really drew you?
Well, there's a secret in this book. From my old identity, Terry Windling actually quoted me. So this is always, I've had this book since it first came out. But, Tanith Lee did some interesting things with fairy tales and genre blending that really nobody else was doing. Angela Carter, of course, but Tanith did something a little bit different. And even in the opening here, Terry Windling says, Lee has been called the Angela Carter of fantasy literature, and like Carter, her approach to fairy tales is very dark, sensual, and thoroughly steeped in the folklore tradition, which is true. But what's also interesting is in this book, Beyond the Woods, that is dedicated to Tanith Lee by Paula Duran. Paula makes another interesting comment about it, that she talks about, you'll find Carter rightly revered in most every academic exploration of fairy tales. Lee is seldom mentioned. Carter has always been considered literary, while Lee is labeled genre. And I think it's really wonderful now that we're kind of like blurring the lines between literary and genre. But for me, it's just storytellers do that. They twist things. She was one of the first that did a Snow White story where Snow White was a vampire, and that makes total sense, right? So that's what it is. That's what she does. She offers permission to break the mold, to break the traditions the fairy tales were in, while still retaining the root essence.
I think that's, I think the interesting thing is that for so many people, especially if you read authors when you're younger, you as a reader, a teen reader, a young adult reader, you're maybe not noticing those lines set by publishing and this is this genre, this is that genre, this is literary, this is not. You're just reading what interests you. And as such, it's, I think, interesting to go back, at least for me personally, and to see the mix of literary and genre authors that I all considered the same, because I think those lines really are just incredibly artificial. It's the use of language, that Tanith had, and other authors in genre have, the subject matter even, you can find in all these different pockets, and what draws them together is, I think, stronger when you're younger and aren't as clearly understanding that there are camps than what keeps you huddled down in one place, especially if you're a curious reader, if you're thirsty for words. All right, so my first question is there any, I'm going to show you my version of the Gorgon and Other Beastly Tales, which I got when I was from the Science Fiction Book Club of America, which was another fairy tale retelling, which I'm barely doing there. And then this cover of The Electric Forest, which was a science fiction book club book, but also crazy cover. It's actually stuck in my brain all these years later. But both of these books were really influential to me personally, and they're very different. One's fairy tale retellings, one's science fiction, and almost like very modern in terms of, I went back and started reading it today. So I'm going to actually, Craig, I wondered if you wanted to read next or if I should go next. We don't really have any questions yet in the chat.
I'm fine with going.
Okay. So our fine co-editor, Craig Laurance Gidney, what are you going to be reading for us, and when was it published?
Well, I'm going to read a short story that Tanith wrote, or part of a short story that Tanith wrote, called The Persecution Machine. And it's from this book. Let's see if I can get it.
It's backgrounds or
Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
My background. There we go. And I actually ended up writing the cover jacket, or they used my cover jacket quote. So I'm going to read from this.
Mm-hmm.
It goes, Gothic priestess, comic young adult author, robust adventure fantasy novelist, Tanith Lee had more writing personas than Sybil. But in her short fiction, all these aspects come gloriously together. Here we go. And now, The Persecution Machine, which is dedicated to the matchless Edward Gorey. And this shows sort of her madcap British sort of sense of humor. My father galloped into the library with a look of terror. Your uncle is coming. My uncle? What do you mean? Constant. But I thought, no, said my father, running to the window and glaring out nervously. He isn't dead, only bad. I see. Of course you don't, my father spared a look of distaste for me. As his son, I had had certain duties never properly explained, one of which was to become a perfect replica of himself in the city of business. Instead, I had metamorphosized into a fashionable writer, and it was not in him to forgive me. Well, he said now, since you're so clever, I'll leave you to entertain him. Try telling him who you are. We've discussed this previously. I'm not clever, only a genius. As for Uncle Constant, if he's calling here, presumably he wishes to see you. After all, he doesn't even know of my existence. I'm not sure I knew of his. It was kept from you. I expect he will have learned 20 years since I saw him. Horrible. Is he deformed? I inquired with pleasant anticipation. No, only in his mind. Stall the wretch. Get him to leave if possible. I shrugged. Does your mother share your aversion? Your mother will only faint, my father said, if he so much as touches the panels of her parlor door. My mother tended to faint comically, continually, when confronted by annoyance. She had already fainted once at my arrival. My father had had the grace only to offer to throw me out. A recent short novel of mine, dealing with forbidden love, very, may I say, tastefully, had caused their latest dislike of me. I, meanwhile, came to visit them from a sense of responsibility, since they were always in want of money. But what was the motive for Bad Constant's arrival? The doorbell rang below. My father shrieked and rushed from the room. When Steppings appeared presently in the library door, I accordingly asked him to show up the visitor. A moment later, my uncle Constant was revealed to me. He was a man of about 58 or 60, corpulent but pale, with a mane of gray hair and disordered clothes. He seemed out of breath, as if he had been running, and he darted a wild look about the room. Are we alone? He demanded. I believe so. Who are you? Your nephew, Charles. Who? Oh, never mind it. Only let me sit down. I'm exhausted. They've pursued me all day. Not a second's peace. He fell noisily into a large chair. Steppings appeared, mostly from nosiness, but I sent him off to bring some of my father's Madeira. I had no qualms in this, since I had supplied the wine myself. Well, Uncle, how may I help you? Help? Impossible. No one can help. I can only ask a minute's respite. His breathing quieted a little, and he blew his nose into a gigantic handkerchief. It's no use my explaining. Only understand that I suffer. That may be said of each of us. I see you're a philosopher, sir. Did you say we are related? My God, I've run into my brother's house, haven't I? Didn't you know? I will run in anywhere I am able when they are after me. Who? Do you mean the police? My Uncle Constant was racked with melodramatic laughter. Steppings came back in with a lump of wine and a tray of biscuits. Constant struck the biscuit and struck the tray, and biscuits flew in all directions. Steppings did not flinch, merely put on an expression of a surprised chicken, which had seen such good service over the years. I rescued the Madeira and poured 2 glasses, waving the chicken away as I did so. Drink this. Is it poison? I don't think so. Nothing short of poison is any use to me. I pain to be released from my suffering, but suicide is a sin. He reminded me of my father. Uncle Constant drank the Madeira at a gulp, and I refilled his glass. They're after me, worse than before. Their weapons, if you only knew. He, as my father had done, bustled to the window. He stared out, I assumed at the peaceful street. Not yet, he muttered, but soon. And you have no matters to consult my father upon, I asked. Who? Who is your father? Your brother. I have no brother, said Uncle Constant, and I am cast out into the shadows. Then his face contorted. It grew red and blue. I hear it, he cried, flinging the goblet on the floor, or rather the carpet. He sprang away and was gone. I heard his cascade down the stairs and saw the crash of the street door. I stood by the window and presently saw him emerge and scuttle down the street. He disappeared from view.
Okay. Craig, that was amazing. We're also, thank you for reading. I'm going to give you some hearts in there because it's super exciting. Now, for you, when did you when you first read this, are you reading it now because you just wanted to show a different element of Tanith, or did it do something for you personally, this particular story?
Well, I read it to show sort of the range of what Tanith does, and most people, or I wouldn't say most people, but a lot of people sort of view her as the brooding goth, sort of gother than Anne Rice type. But she was also quite silly and fun and crazy, and she's written a couple of stories, more than a few stories, that are just absolutely insane and sort of full of this Monty Python-esque type of humor that you wouldn't find. And I found this particular story in Weird Tales.
Oh.
And Weird Tales in the early 2000s dedicated a double issue tour and has 3 stories, including one story that's sort of an Arthurian retelling, this story which is an Edward Gorey sort of pastiche, and another story which was sort of a vampire story. So it showed all sort of sides of her.
Okay, I have keyboard sounds going on. My apologies. Too many things going on at the same time. You guys are being so patient for a live stream that this is crazy. I mean, we spent over a year planning for the Kickstarter. We spent a tough 48 hours setting up a live stream. So you're getting us rough and ready. So we hope you are bearing with us while we're doing this. And I'm glad we're here though, because this is a big deal. And being together with some people who are interested or passionate about Tanith, and with my co-editors, while we really come to the starting line of this project. We've worked so hard to get these particular authors to join us. Nisi Shaw, Claire Cooney, Terry Windling, Martha Wells, Elia Dawn Johnson, Theodora Goss, Andy Duncan, and Maya Dean. And then we also have at least 6 slots for an open call we'll be running in July, actually. And those slots, depending on how the Kickstarter goes, that could go up to 12. We don't know yet. Because we want to pay people well. So we're going to be paying pro rates both to the invited authors and to the authors who join us through the open call. We're going to have 2 one-week windows for open call. We've got all these things planned out. 1 week is for traditionally or historically marginalized groups, and the other is a general open call that both have 1 week period. But again, the live stream, despite months and months of planning everything else, we live streamed with like less than 48 hours of doing everything, and even with filters, you may see that I am pretty tired. I'm thrilled though to do this, and I hope people really take note of the fact that this book has got Anne Vandermeer, who was the editor of Weird Tales, who loves all of Tanith's work and included her in every project she did because she respected her work so much, is writing an afterword for this. She's done a long-form discussion with me about Tanith. She became good friends with Tanith after they met professionally, and was mentored by Tanith, actually. Without Tanith Lee, probably we'd have a slightly different Anne Vandermeer. Without Tanith Lee, Martha Wells, who says that some of her early inspiration for her Murderbot in the Murderbot series was Silver Metal Lover, and without Tanith Lee's Silver Metal Lover, Murderbot might be a little different, or it might have come out differently. There's ways in which Tanith Lee is floating around all of us. In fairy tale retellings, Theodora Goss, who's in the anthology, and talks about how for her, she first encountered fairy tale retellings and really formed her sort of like lens around that and her interest in it from Tanith Lee's work. So without Tanith Lee, there is no Dora Goss. And Claire Cooney has much the same to say about her style of writing. It's Nisi Shawl talks about it. Maya Dean talks about, I'm not going to run over there and pull a book off my shelf, but about drinking sapphire wine as being incredibly integral. I mean, I love so many of these authors. Elia Dawn Johnson talks about the YA and how, and Elia writes, you know, more than one vein, but she writes incredibly young adult work, and it was Tanith who showed her how to write complex characters with all their flaws and still write in a mode that allows you to be emotionally truthful in YA. And it's something she says is actually rather vanishingly hard to find, and when done well is transformational for the kids who read it, or the young adults who read it. So all that is to say that this book is both about Tanith Lee, but it's also about what we are, what all of these creative folks are, what we are, we're all authors as well, in what ways we're connected, and how our work sort of kind of can sing together because of her. Do you have anything else you guys want to add to that?
I think that Tanith Lee also is sort of under-recognized as being sort of a stylist. A lot of people don't think that fantasy and science fiction and genre fiction have any flair or any voice, but she had a particular style.
She was a stylist. Yeah.
She was a stylist, and you know, whenever people are like, "Oh, well, I don't read science fiction and fantasy because you know it's pedestrian prose," I show them something of hers, and they're just like, "What?"
And I think
You know?
I think there's plenty of authors out there in genre, including all of us, who are stylists, and perhaps in part, at least for me, she gave me permission to do both fantastical work and stylistic work, because that's how I want to write. That's how my brain works. And there's too many people I've met in my life who are like, you need to write realistic fiction if you're going to be a stylist. And it's not true. You should write the things that your imagination, that your heart is creating. And she was probably the first, when I had no real live people telling me that, she was telling me that through her work. We're almost done with the live stream, and I thought I might read, because I didn't mean to do this, but I thought I might read a little bit from The Electric Forest. All right, I'm going to take a vote. Anyone want to vote between The Silver Medal Lover, you can't really see it, or In the Electric Forest? Either way works for us. And if there are no votes, I'll ask for my co-editors to take a vote. Because I'm drawn to both. Because they're both, I entered Tanith Lee, unlike a lot of people, through science fiction. That was my passion above fantasy, above folktales and fairy tales. It was science fiction. And other things too. I read biography, I read everything. Okay, Silver Medal Lover it is, my friends. Here we go. The Silver Medal Lover is considered by many the first contemporary fantasy romance, but it's also considered YA, it's also considered science fiction. When it was published in the 80s, it was part of the science fiction book club, which is where I came across it eventually in their catalog. It was originally published by Daw in 1981, and the thing that made it stand out, because while the content was about a young girl, a teenage girl, and her forming a romantic attachment with a robot lover, right? We can see Murderbot coming in there. It isn't about, like Philip K. Dick, the robots will take over the world. It isn't that. It's about love and connection and two personalities growing together and growing as people. Even a robot person. It truly is. And it's was unique at the time. So this is the Silver Medal Lover. I didn't realize it was quite this old, but shockingly, her work still stands up. 1981, because this edition is 1999. I grew up with my mother in Shea Stratos, my mother's house in the clouds. It's a beautiful house, but I never knew it was beautiful until people told me so. How beautiful, they cried. So I learned it was. To me, it was just home. It's terrible being rich. One has awful false values, which one can generally only replace with other falser values. For example, the name of the house, which is apparently very vulgar, is a deliberate show of indifference to vulgarity on my mother's part. This tells you something about my mother, so perhaps I should tell you some more. My mother is 5'7" tall. She has very blonde hair and very green eyes. She is 63, but looks about 37 because she takes regular courses of Rejuvenex. She decided to have a child rather late, but the Rejuvenex made that perfectly all right. She selected me and had herself artificially inseminated with me and bore me 5 months later by means of the precipita method, which only takes 3 or 4 hours. I was breastfed because it would be good for me, and after that my mother took me everywhere with her, sometimes all around the world, through swamps and ruins and over broad, surging seas. But I don't remember very much of this, because when I was about 6, she got tired of it, and we went to Shea Stratos, and more or less stayed here ever since. The city is only 20 miles away, and on clear days you can see it quite easily from the balcony balloons of the house. I've always liked the city, particularly the look of it at night, with all the distant lights glittering like strings and heaps of jewels. My mother, hearing this description once, said it was an uninspired analogy. But that's just what the city at night looks like to me, so I don't know what else to say. It's going to be very difficult, actually, putting all this down. If my analogies turn out badly every time, maybe I just won't use analogies. Which brings me to me. And that's where I'll stop. Thank you, everyone, for joining the live stream and for marking it with us. I wish I could type in the chat, but if I do that, I won't be talking to you. So, Carina and Craig, I'm so glad you're on this journey. I can't wait to actually make the book. I can't wait to see what people offer up in open submissions. I can't wait to see what our invited authors are going to provide, which we should be getting. The invited authors will be delivering their stories to us in June, so that when the open call comes in July, we'll be able to have everything play nicely together. And eventually, our publication date is actually May of 2025, which is also the 10th anniversary of Tanith's passing, which is the reason this project occurred to me and talked with Carina about and pulled in Craig with probably a couple of years ago now. So it's a long time in coming, but it feels it's a really long time in coming. I shouldn't be this tired. Would you guys like to add anything before I end the stream?
I just want to thank everybody for coming.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you being here. Appreciate your support. It's great to see the love that people have for Tanith. And boy, you guys, Julie's been working so hard on this. Just wait until you see. It just truly amazing. I'm so happy to be a part of it with Julie and with Craig. This book is just gonna blow things up. It's just fantastic.
I'm so excited to read it. Craig?
And I would like to say that as someone who actually knew Tanith, and sort of, I have a feeling she's, wherever she is, she's smiling down and happy that we're doing this.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. I can't even make hearts, but I mean it. All right, you guys. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm going to end the stream now. That's another first, ending a stream. So let's see how that goes, right? Let's see if I can find it. Sorry, this is where it goes off the rails because I have to find out how to end the stream. Give me 2 seconds. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end this. And content. No. Hang
Thanks
on.
for coming, Mike.
End stream.